All right, well, here we go. Start of Unit 4. That's Tuesday. Hope you had a good long weekend. We are moving right along in this class. Believe it or not, we are 3 weeks into the course already. I guess 3 weeks in a day, if you technically count yesterday, which was a holiday, and yet I'm sure some of you still worked on the day. Hopefully you were able to take advantage of that extra day if you need to get caught up. Just a reminder, I'm not taking late assignments because we're so far into the term. We really need to make sure that we stay on schedule with everything as it's due. So I hope we're having fun. I hope we're having just a great learning experience. I'm hearing from a number of you. I'm getting to read your comments and thoughts. I'm really enjoying all the things that you are communicating with each other and with me, and just thinking, getting a kind of a sneak peek into your mind as you think about these ideas of vocation. You read these texts and you're caused to really think about what is vocation, what is calling, why does it matter, what does it matter to me, what does it matter to those around me, and so forth. What's so fun for me is I get to teach this class, and concurrently, more often than not, if not always, I would say, when I'm teaching this class, I'm also teaching my career development theories and techniques course for the MFT program. And so I'm getting to kind of run in parallel rails these ideas of career development, where I'm infusing that course with vocation, and vocation where I'm infusing this course with career development. And I'm hearing from folks, and I was reflecting some of the comments made in my career development course, and reflecting on some of the comments made in this class, and thinking to myself, man, wouldn't it be great if there was like this mashup of courses? Maybe there would be at some point where, or maybe even a mashup of students, where you could then speak to the MFT students, and the MFT students could speak to you and share your learnings and see kind of where the holes in that class are filled with the content that you're learning, and where the holes in this class are filled with the content that they're learning. So I hope it's fun. I hope it's enjoyable. I'm hearing from a number of you, like I said, had a really fun email exchange with a student in class, and as they were prayerfully contemplating and considering their vocation, what does this idea of vocation mean to them? And vocation can be a kind of a confusing thing. I think it's exchanged these days for talking about vocational training. We talk about HVAC, or being a car mechanic or plumber, things of that nature. And yet it's so much more than electrician, so much more than that. We're talking about this idea of vocation that dates back all the way to the Reformation. This doctrine of vocation that Martin Luther really spurned on in the days of the Reformation. So back in what is this? Well, we're talking 2019, so 500 years ago. I guess 502 years ago, 501 and a half years ago. I think it was 1517. But this is something that's been with the American church for so long, and so I think that it's there's lots of strong words that could be used, but it's been confused along the way with being an occupation. And if you listen and you hear people in the way they talk, you will hear that they will exchange occupation for vocation and vice versa. So what are you going to do vocationally? And yet it's so much more than that when we talk about the stations of vocation. So they're challenging topics, they're challenging conversations to have, but they're worthwhile conversations to have. You've got the Keller book review coming up here in a couple of weeks. So we're in Unit 4, and in Unit 6 you have the Keller book review that's due. This text by Tim Keller, Every Good Endeavor, is probably one of my favorite books of all time. So I went through a training process in my church this last year, and we read that book. I've taught this class before we read this book. I've used that text in other courses. I taught a class, I can't remember the title of the course. It was an undergraduate class on vocation, and we used elements of that book. So I just really find that this book is incredibly valuable to help us think about this idea of work and vocation and calling. And I think to rightly understand what these things truly mean and how they fit together. And to realize that I think so often in our world especially, we think about work and calling and vocation, we talk think about faith and all of these things together in a dualistic way. So we think that they're separate. So here's sacred work and here's secular work. We think about this dating back to 1990. I would say probably there's 3 main books that have come out in the last 1990, so 29 years. Let's just call it 30 years. Every Good Endeavor by Tim Keller is one of them. I think it's one of the main books in this kind of this area. The other one is The Fabric of This World by Lee Hardy. Another just amazing book that talks a lot about these ideas. And then the third book is called Work by Dr. Doriani, who's a professor at Covenant Theological Seminary. And I think that these are kind of the 3 seminal texts. I think that Hardy led off things. Obviously, we refer back to Luther and all that. But in the last 30 years, Hardy's book is really the kind of the preeminent text. Keller took what Hardy had taught, and he references Hardy all over the place. I think that's the next step. And I think this book by Doriani, this book Work, is really kind of that next development in the phase that really helps us to think about this. In fact, I was asked to teach a class at our church this summer, and I was given some curriculum to consider, and I said I was busy, so I couldn't do it, and I'm glad that I said no because I was involved in some other things at the church over the summer. But I also looked at the content that they wanted to teach, and I said, I don't think I could, even if I said yes, I couldn't teach this because it's too dualistic. It's too, it's trying to exist in these 2 spaces of sacred and secular. And when we come to, I think, really this firm understanding of what it is that God has called us to in work, what we should be seeing is that there are not divides between sacred work and secular work. When we think about church work, or we even think about, years and years back when you had the philosophers, Plato and Socrates, or you had the monks, and they were thinking, this is the ultimate work. And we pity the fools that have to do that hard labor, right? The back-bending hard labor. If we can just think with our minds and philosophize, this is the ultimate work. Or we can, be in seclusion and be in monastic situations, this is the ultimate work. And we had this hierarchy where we said that there were certain things that were more important in work than other things. There were certain things that were more holy or more sacred. And nowhere do we see that in Scripture that's the case. And so we're making these man-made laws or these man-made rules up and saying that, no, this is actually more important. So my job is more important than your job. And that's simply not the case. I think we get into this when we start using these terms like, I just do this. I'm just a, whatever. So I'm just a stay-at-home parent. I'm just an administrative assistant. I'm just a sign twirler for Caltrans. I mean, there's all these things. So when we catch ourselves using that word just, what it does is it minimizes the importance and the value of what it is that we actually do. So I don't think anybody, in fact, I'm confident that nobody is just anything. We are. And the more time we spend thinking about faith and work, or faith at work, as we're looking at both of those this week, I think will have a better understanding and ability to connect our faith and spirituality to vocation and calling. So there's our outcomes for the week. So we've got some reading. So Finding Jesus at Work, Is God Necessary for Vocation? And a number of things you can look at and read these things on your own. You'll notice that in the midst of all of our weekly readings, there's at least 1, sometimes 2 or 3 articles in there that specifically deal with career development. I love this article at the bottom of the listed readings, Why Tim Keller Wants You to Stay in a Job That You Hate. I actually took a class from one of his proteges some years ago, I guess a couple of years ago. And one of the things, the questions that was asked in the midst of this was, the question that was posed was, is the reason that you want to leave your job the very reason that God wants you to stay? And that's a challenging question to consider. I think a lot of us would say, I want to quit my job. I can't stand my job. But what's the reason for that? What's the rationale for that? These are important questions for us to consider, and I think these articles get at that really well. Then we have our discussion. So these are just great questions. So faith and work, faith at work. What value, if any, does one's faith bring to their work? How might a person of faith view their work differently than someone with no faith? Do you believe that vocation and calling can mean similar or the same thing to people of faith and those without? How? And then what unique characteristics do people of faith bring to their work? How is this unique? A number of years ago, there was an article, I think it was put out by The Atlantic, and it talked about how although there's, in some circles, there's a movement to kind of squelch a little bit of how much folks might talk about their faith in the workplace. There's also seen uptick in the hiring on of organizational chaplains, right? Business chaplains, workplace chaplains. If I can find it, I'll post the article underneath the video. So that was really interesting to see there's an uptick. There's folks that are realizing the value of faith within the workplace, which I think is really important. So something to think about there. The next discussion we'll have is the 4 E's of faith. I think this is great, something to really contemplate and think deeply about as you consider from the Center for Faith and Work. I'm on the board for the Center for Faith and Work Los Angeles, which comes out of the work of the Center for Faith and Work at Redeemer Presbyterian Church in New York City. So there's some great content here, and I really appreciate what they have to offer. So looking forward to hearing what you think about that. Ethics, experience, expression, evangelism, and enrichment. So looking forward to that. That's a discussion that we have. And then there's some weekly wrap-up. So looking forward to your 3 takeaways, your 2 questions, and your 1 application as we dig into that. So lots to consider this week. You've got your calling survey. So, you just complete that and submit that. I'm about to have all of our grades updated. I got a little bit delayed just with the extended weekend, and just had a really great time with family, and hope that you were able to do that as well. So getting caught up, and we'll definitely have those grades posted here quickly. And then a reminder, of course, that we're still working on the vocational profile and plan. So I hope that you have spent time really going through each of these different practices. So it's due at the end of Unit 8. There's a great article. You have to go find this on Harvard Business Review titled How to Play to Your Strengths. It is an excellent article for you to check out. It's a really involved assignment. So if you've not started, I'm just going to say, if you've not started on your assignment, you're late, you're behind, and it's going to catch up with you. And I have a feeling that you're frantically going to freak out about getting this done if you don't start right away. So I want to encourage you that you need to get going on this. Even if you haven't had time to contemplate and be quiet and all of those things, you can do that starting today. And I really want to encourage you to get going on that. Okay. The last thing I want to mention is this career development presentation. So I'm going to be sharing information more along what's expected of you, and kind of where I'm looking for your involvement from the group standpoint. So you've got plenty of time. We still have 5 weeks left in the term, but I do want you to be thinking about that. So I will break you up into your groups and be sending that information out this week. So thank you again for your involvement, your commitment to the learning, the class. It's been great to learn with you, to learn from you, to hear from you. You're asking a lot of really important questions. I'm grateful for that. You're not being shy, which is great. So you're actually reaching out and you're saying, hey, I need some help with this or that. So I'm so thankful for that. So keep up the great work. Thank you again for just the contemplation, and it's really just clear that you're thinking deeply about the content. One of the other classes I teach, we look at Bloom's taxonomy, which is this tiered value and kind of the goal of learning. And at the bottom, which is like the larger portion of the triangle of the pyramid, is understanding and comprehension, memory, and so forth. At the top, we're looking at analysis, we're looking at creation, and we're looking at kind of just going deep into this criticism and just critical thinking and all that. And so what I love about graduate education is we get at that. So please continue on with that. Please continue to go deep, because ultimately, here's what we're looking at is we're learning new information, not just so it can expire or terminate on us. It's resting on our shoulders, And I believe that when we learn something, knowledge is power, and we have then a responsibility, this burden of responsibility that's resting squarely on our shoulders. And the question that's being asked is, what are you now going to do with what you now know? So I hope you'll consider those things as we move forward. Have a great week. Watch for an email with groups, and we'll see you online.